Alright, we're finally here. Somehow, someway, a boxing match between a vlogger slash professional wrestler and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion has become the most talked about fight in all of combat sports right now. Logan Paul versus Dillon Danis is just days away, and as of right now, praying that nothing changes before I actually upload this video, it looks like there's going to be no pullouts, no injuries, no last second opponent changes. This fight is officially going to happen, which means that I'm now safe to make a prediction video, a much needed prediction video, because I think a lot of people are off on this one. First of all, we have to state the obvious. Logan is clearly going to be the bigger man in this fight, but not by as much as some people may think. Since we sadly got robbed of the pre-fight face-off thanks to John Fury, I think many people missed the opportunity to see just how close in size these two really are, in terms of both reach and height. When it comes to the size difference in this one, we're really only talking about a couple inches at best, which is important to mention since Logan, though he's only had a handful of boxing matches, has consistently had a pretty major size advantage over his opponents. Look back at the two fights against KSI and then obviously the fight against Floyd Mayweather. And despite this huge size advantage, he hasn't been known to utilize it all that well. You would think he'd be able to utilize it a little bit in the clinch, but considering now he's going up against Dillon Danis, again a guy who's similar in size and oh by the way has a lifetime of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience, I don't think Logan's going to want to engage in the clinch much or at all. In terms of experience, obviously Logan's been boxing way longer than Dillon has, but even throughout some of the fights that he's had in the past, he really hasn't proved to be all that dangerous. We've yet to see him display any kind of devastating punching power, though I do think his experience will show in this fight in terms of measuring and gauging distance and timing. When you take that into consideration, on top of Dillon making it very public that he's willing to take one to give one in this fight, Dillon is definitely gonna get hit early on in this one and probably clean. But one thing I think people don't really think about is how Dillon Danis has been in negotiations to box Jake Paul since before the Ben Askren fight. So I think it's probably safe to assume that the guy has been working on and focused on his boxing for a few years now in some capacity. Olympic medalist and professional boxer Tony Jeffries recently did a video breaking down Dillon's two fights in Bellator from a striking perspective, where he brought up the fact that yes, Dillon is a grappler, but when you look at his footwork and some of his defensive movement, even back then before he was really focused on his boxing, it wasn't as bad as some people make it out to be. And in those fights, you can at the very least tell that Dillon is a fighter and he's not the kind of guy that's just gonna shell up after he gets hit. Like I mentioned earlier, I definitely think Dillon is going to get cracked in this one. The guy's got an enormous head, so I think it's probably safe to say that he's gonna have a decent chin. And unlike some of the MMA guys that Jake Paul's been able to knock out, Dillon hasn't taken a full MMA career's worth of brain damage, so he might end up being a lot more durable than people think. And then when you look at Logan, we've never really seen him in too much trouble in any of his 3 boxing matches, so we really don't know much about how he's going to react if he does get hit. For all we know, he could be the kind of guy that's very comfortable being the hammer but can't take being the nail. I think Logan's athleticism is going to play a huge role in terms of the footwork. Let's not forget Dillon Danis is coming off of not 1 but 2 knee reconstruction surgeries, so yeah, I think chances are you're not going to see him displaying any kind of high level footwork in this one. I think there's a good chance that what we end up seeing is Dillon with his hands up, moving forward, very plotting footwork, trying to back up Logan into a corner, and depending on how far along Dillon's footwork in a boxing ring has come, he's either going to be able to successfully back Logan up into the corner where he can get off some shots, or Logan's going to constantly circle out and pick him apart from a distance the entire night. Now, from everything I've heard and everything I've watched, there seems to be a good amount of people that can vouch for the fact that in a boxing ring, Dillon actually does have some decent power in his hands, and I think that is going to catch Logan very off guard. While yes, Dillon is a grappler, I think that equating him to what we saw out of Ben Askren is just not an equal comparison at all. And if Logan goes into this one expecting a Ben Askren part 2, he's gonna get a rude awakening. Now, as far as Logan, of course, he looks like the kind of guy that has some kind of big time power in his hands. We've yet to see that, and I don't necessarily know if it's that he doesn't possess that kind of power or if he doesn't really know how to utilize it. So while a lot of people are expecting Logan to knock out Dillon cold, we really don't have much evidence to go off of to suggest that that's even possible, since we've never seen Logan knock anyone out and we've never seen Dillon knocked down. One other point that I don't see mentioned a lot is the fact that there is almost 0 footage of Dillon Danis boxing. Yeah, we've got a 2-second clip here, a 5-second clip there, but we really don't understand exactly what kind of fighter he's going to be. And if he actually has been working on his boxing over the past few years, there is a chance that he is significantly better than what people are giving him credit for. And he's publicly stated that there's a reason he doesn't want all this footage out there. He wants Logan to be completely surprised in the ring. We do know that Dillon kind of sort of let it slip on a podcast recently that he might actually be naturally right-handed. His right hand might be his power hand, even though he typically fights in southpaw, kind of like Oscar De La Hoya. So there's a chance that we see him in this fight constantly switching stances, which for Logan, who is a pretty inexperienced boxer, could cause some problems. And finally, yes, we do have to mention the gigantic androgenic elephant in the room. I've personally always been kind of on the fence about this, but as of late, the evidence is really starting to pile up that Logan realistically is probably taking performance enhancing drugs. And since Dillon is coming off of a 4-year layoff, Logan could potentially have a major cardio advantage in this fight. And since Logan is predicting a late stoppage, that could be his path to doing exactly that. And then of course, when you look at Dillon Danis' 2 fights in Bellator, they both ended very early, so we've never even seen what he looks like in later rounds of any kind of fight. In conclusion, there's always the chance that something crazy happens in a fight, but barring some kind of out of nowhere, perfectly timed, perfectly placed punch from either fighter in the first round, I think what we're going to end up seeing is a much more competitive fight than what anyone's giving this credit for. I still give the advantage to Logan. The guy's got the edge in experience, the edge in size, and even if the fight's really close and it goes the distance, I honestly doubt that the PBA, if the fight goes the distance, is going to give Dillon a fair shake. So considering all the advantages that Logan has, this should be a relatively easy victory for him. But that's assuming that Logan's taking this deadly seriously. Because if Logan goes in there expecting an easy fight, or if he is at all distracted by how catastrophic a loss to Dillon Danis on this scale would be, then I think there's a very good chance that Dillon ends up hurting Logan, probably to the body, wearing him down, and if he can't deal with being the nail rather than the hammer, I honestly think a TKO win for Dillon is definitely in play. I think Logan should win this fight fairly easily, and I think there's a chance that he could even get a stoppage in the mid to later rounds, especially if Dillon's cardio is just not there. So in short, I'm about 60-40 leaning towards Logan, but it all depends on where his head's at and how serious he took this camp, given the fact that he's also constantly touring with the WWE. But I also think that Dillon is going to look a lot better than what people think, and there is a chance that he goes in there and shocks the world. Thanks for watching.